Now, this week it was revealed that more than 300 people have contacted the BBC with allegations of racism, corruption and bullying of victims by police. This follows a Panorama undercover investigation which revealed evidence of similar behaviour at one of London's busiest police stations. 3 of the officers who were secretly filmed as part of that programme were dismissed on Thursday, with the 4th fired on Friday following accelerated misconduct hearings. Today we ask, can the police regain public trust? Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by former Met Police detective and head of crime and justice at the Policy Exchange, David Spencer, barrister Grace Rose Gwynn, the CEO of the Runnymede Trust, Dr. Shabnah Begum, and author and former prison governor Vanessa Frake-Harris. Good to see you all. Thanks for coming in. I mean, David, 4 officers from that Panorama documentary have been sacked, with more present and former officers facing disciplinary hearings. I mean, have the police really been exposed as being institutionally toxic? I mean, these are strong words, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that some of the scenes that we saw on the Panorama show are utterly repugnant, and the fact that the police, the Met, are responding to it by taking action so quickly, I think is probably a positive step forward. I think one of the things that's interesting is if you look at the data, and the data can tell us a lot here about can the police rebuild trust? I think the data says that the answer is yes, they can. So when Londoners are asked, do you trust the police? About 3/4 say they do. And over the last couple of years, we've seen that number ticking up ever so slightly from where it was a couple of years ago. So the data suggests they can, but there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, our question, can the police regain trust, Shabnah? The data suggests they can. And let's actually think about it. There are 150,000 police officers in the UK. We're talking about, a handful of police officers there who've been lost their jobs.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. Well, I think there's 2 things to say about that. First of all, I think that the data, we need to treat that data very carefully. I think the data and the trends over time have shown that there has been a deterioration of trust and public confidence in the police. And we kind of keep treating this as a problem of a few bad apples that we can kind of discipline and expel out of the police force, when clearly what we've had is decades of investigations, inquiries, reports, whether it's the Macpherson report of 1991 to the 2023 Casey review, which has talked about this as an institutional problem. These are systems that are going wrong. We are not going to be able to kind of expel our way out of this problem. We are not going to have resignations and disciplinary action that's going to fix the trust that has been lost. And it's been lost because we have a system that is unworthy of our trust.
Yeah, I mean, Grace, a few things mentioned there. So that Macpherson report, 1999, that's over a quarter of a century ago. The Casey report, then a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, was it? Yeah, 2 years ago, similar sort of stuff. Doesn't feel like things are changing, does it?
No, and I can absolutely appreciate that. And these concerns are historic. We hear about them time and time again. What I do respect, though, is that the Met have responded quickly and appropriately, but more does need to be done. So we also need to look at the culture within inside the Met. So we see the lady on the Panorama documentary, she clearly felt uncomfortable with some of the comments being made, but she didn't feel able to actually call that behaviour out because she says he's got stripes on his uniform. And so I think they actually need to look internal at the Met and all police forces across the nation and look at this hierarchical system and actually whether it is silencing calling out this bad behaviour. But I do think we can regain the trust, but it's a long way off.
So, yeah, a positive feeling there. I mean, Vanessa, when you've worked in prisons, of course, had professional dealings with the police. It's a tough environment. I mean, there are a lot of things that are said, probably. There's bravado, isn't it, people say, that sort of stuff. Is that fair? Is that a fair defence in some ways? Not the stuff we saw in the Panorama, but that culture.
Look, I don't think that there can be any excuse for culture that demeans women or minority communities or various WhatsApps to each other. I think, that is beyond culture. That is beyond acceptable in any shape or form. And, I think a lot is wrong with police forces all over the country. Even Mark Rowley said that, to rebuild the trust within the police, it's going to take time, 10 years. So I don't think, there's going to be one quick fix here in any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I mean, so we're all in agreement that the Panorama stuff was bad. I mean, actually, I'd be worried if you didn't think it was bad. But we're not in agreement on whether things can be turned around. I mean, David, you mentioned those figures. So those figures of trust, I think, for the Met, on the police generally, you said it was about 75%. That's from the Crime Survey for England and Wales up until March this year. But there are other figures within that that really point to a very downward projection of people's perception of the police. So, victims of crime, whether they're satisfied or not, 51%. That's down 20% in 10 years. I mean, that's shocking, isn't it?
And actually, you allude to what I think is the far bigger problem here. And so one of the questions that Londoners are asked is, do you think the police in your local area are doing a good job? And what we've seen over the last 7 years, since 2018, is that number has been plummeting. So it was about 70% when you look at 2018. That number is now about 45%, and it's been on a downward trend. So what we're seeing time and again is Londoners, and this is probably replicated elsewhere in the country as well, don't think the local police are doing a good job.
So what are the solutions to that?
Well, we need to get the police focusing on the things that the public really care about. This is something Policy Exchange has looked at time and again. So arresting shoplifters, making sure that people that are carrying knives are stopped and searched. Those sorts of things, raw crime that is happening in local areas, that's what people want the police tackling.
Yeah, can I come in on that? Because I think that we're trapped in this kind of really narrow conversation about trust and policing. And what we focus on is this idea that somehow we're going to police our way out of some of the problems that you've just described there. And I think that if the police have lost their credibility, if they've lost confidence and trust, we need to kind of expand the debate. We need to think about why have we seen this increase in shoplifting? Why have we seen this increase in violent crime? And we need to stop investing in this failed system and begin to think about the community investment that we need, the community infrastructures that we need that will enable people to feel safe. Because actually, often that data relies on a very binary question about, are you feeling unsafe and would you like to see more police power?
What are those things, community? Just give us an example.
Well, I'm talking about the kind of... So I was a teacher for 23 years before I came to the Runnymede Trust. And I know that schools have had their pastoral and mental health support completely stripped. We know that youth centres have closed. We know that community centres have closed. We know that libraries have closed. These are all the assets that communities need to feel safe. People need jobs where they can be paid properly and have time to spend with their family and friends. These are all the infrastructural things that we need to invest in rather than carrying on with this kind of line that we're going to invest in police, have more police and flood our communities with police rather than the resources that we need.
Yeah, I'd love to see more investment in some of the things that you're talking about. That would be great. The reality is there are people out there who are eagerly committing crime every single day. And what we need is people on the policing front line catching those criminals. I'm afraid we're never going to live in a world where that isn't required, and that's what the public expects.
OK, Grace, going back to that trust, I'm trying to think of solutions. So just to put this to you, according to the charity End Violence Against Women, last year, 73% of rape survivors said the police treatment worsened their mental health. I mean, I'm reeling off all these figures and these stories of how people felt when they dealt with the police, and it's actually really shocking because these are people who have been raped. What are the solutions to something like that? How do you solve that?
I think there's a real problem in the culture. I think education, training of dealing with victims of sexual offences.
So police on education?
Absolutely. I think the police need to be educated in that. There needs to be specialist task force to know how to communicate with victims. It's something that I've experienced insofar as clients have said to me, their complaints weren't taken seriously, they were dismissed, they were victim blamed. We hear these languages all the time. So I think the police need to be educated, but I don't think we can lose optimism or positivity, else then we lose all faith in the system moving forward.
And what about diversity initiatives?
Absolutely. Again, it's all the education, and the comments that we saw in the documentary are so uncomfortable to listen to, but absolutely, they need training.
Shabnam, just come to you in a sec. Vanessa, this is the Mail on Sunday. Fury as Hard Up Met is set to splurge £5 million a year on 64-strong woke task force. So they're saying the frontline services down to the bone, but they're spending £5.2 million on the diversity.
Well, look,
is it right to do that?
I don't think that you can call treating people with decency and understanding their issues is woke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
OK.
And again,
Shabnam.
we've had decades of diversity training, of initiatives that have been designed to improve the culture within the Met Police and within police forces. It hasn't worked because those things don't stick when you have a system that is fundamentally, the logics of the system are designed to be punitive and controlling. And so therefore you are never going to diversity train or kind of have cultural behavioural changes that are dealing with individuals rather than systems that's going to actually work.
Do you agree with this Mail on Sunday?
Well, no, I don't agree with the Mail on Sunday headline, not in the sense that they're describing it, which is that it's a waste of money because these initiatives
You're
and
saying
anything.
It's a waste of money because other things need to be done.
What I'm saying is that those reforms haven't worked. So investments like that are a sideshow because actually we need systemic change, and systemic change doesn't come from sticking plaster solutions. And it's Albert Einstein that says the definition of madness is to keep doing the same thing and expect different results.
I mean,
we can't keep doing this.
David, that is a good point. It's a sticking plaster. Just keep putting money into the police, and we've got other problems that we need to solve to get to the bottom of all of this.
The answers to the problems in the Met Police are not going to be found in a classroom, and the sort of schemes you're describing, they're not going to be the answer here. The answer, and what we saw on the Panorama programme, was a failure of leadership. And the answers to policing's problem are a significant improvement in the quality of leaders and leadership in policing.
So that is in the classroom. They do need to be taught.
But
I don't understand what you're saying. So you're saying we shouldn't teach them, but they need to be taught.
But the key issue is these sorts of, I think you're right, I think they are a sticking plaster. What we need to see is an improvement in the calibre of leadership, frontline leadership.
How do you do that?
Well, partly it's about recruiting the right people in the first place. There is obviously training and development, but actually this isn't about what goes on in the classroom. This is about how you mentor leaders, how you develop them on the front line when they're actually doing things on the streets.
Vanessa.
Well, I was going to say it's better vetting, it's integrity checks. Once you're vetted, that's it. But this has got to be ongoing. It's all very well just saying that, by not continuing with vetting, that you're going to root these people out. You've got to be hard. Because there are an awful lot of men and women in our police forces right through the country who do an amazing job. But there are certain bad eggs in that basket that are losing public trust at an alarming rate.
Grace, you're nodding.
I think there also needs to be a look at internal. What happens when these behaviours happen? Is there a structure that these can be complained about to higher up, and they're taken more seriously rather than, as we see, people feeling uncomfortable to speak out and then nothing gets done?
Yeah, I mean, you don't look happy, Shona.
No, I just think that the terms of the conversation are just so poor. I think that, I am a mum, I'm a woman, I'm a mum of 2 teenage children. I want my children to be safe. I want my community to be safe. And I don't think kind of talking about internal initiatives or a few bad apples or indeed kind of improving leadership is going to solve the problem. I think our communities deserve to feel safe. Our communities need investment in the kind of infrastructure, the kind of support that we know actually builds safe, strong communities, not this tired debate around more reform, a new Met for London, which doesn't ever deliver.
Yeah, so David, how do we balance this sort of accountability for past failings, but the need to move forward and constructively bringing everybody with us?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we need to absolutely recognise where things have gone awry in the past, and I think we would all agree that things have gone awry in some pretty significant ways. My own view is what the police would need to get the police focusing on what their job primarily is, and their job is fighting crime effectively. And I'm afraid that's one of the problems in the Met at the moment, is most Londoners simply don't think the Met are effective at their core mission of fighting crime, and that's the core of the solution here.
And that's where we'll have to leave it. So thank you all very much indeed. Carla